Welcome to the Fit Affiliate podcast, hosted by Tony Ronke and Lisa Hetherington, where we talk about behaviours and behaviour-based conversations as they apply to affiliate owners and coaches.
Late.
Always fashionably late. And welcome to
It's
another
okay.
episode of the Fit Affiliate podcast, joined by my ever fashionably late co-host, Mr. Tony. And
Emphasis
today,
on fashion on that, just so we're clear on that.
I thought I'd give you a compliment today. I thought I'd throw you a little bit of something. But we are very excited to host the one and only Nicole Christensen today for a chat, one of the most OG of the OGs, owner of CrossFit Roots and all things professional coaching. And I guess if you've been in the CrossFit space for more than 2 minutes, you should have heard the standard is a standard. You'll know where it's very much one of your key mantras. I think I've heard it on every podcast I've heard you speak on.
That's funny. I didn't know it was going to become such a thing.
It's how those things usually end up happening, right? You just say something, you're like,
Right.
didn't realize that was going to grow so many wings,
Yeah.
but here we are. I'm just on the back of this thing for forever.
So we thought it was a great chance to have you on, Nicole, talk all things affiliate life, coaching life, CrossFit Roots, all the good things. And I know that you and Tony have quite a few adventures and stories that no doubt we'll touch on over time. And he's been around, since Jesus wore short pants. So I'm sure.
Whoa, that makes me seem even way older. It's bad enough I have gray in my beard now, and then you're calling me late. Now you're calling me old too.
This is our first call together this week, so I'm getting.
This is actually a
back to
podcast
that.
takeover where we're just going to beat you up for 45 minutes, it sounds like.
Yeah.
I'm out. I guess my time here has been rendered obsolete. Well, first and foremost, obviously, I'm glad that you're here, Nicole. Sorry, I was late to the podcast. I'm just always late to the podcast.
I've been late too before.
It's
No stress.
I think I've probably said this before, but we had like EC on, we had some other people. But generally speaking, I would say that when we decided to come up with this idea for the podcast, there was a handful of key guests who I was like, perfect person I want to put on the podcast. You were definitely one of those avatars. So I'm really glad that you're here.
Well,
and you're like,
thanks.
what on earth are you going to ask me on this podcast? 'Cause
Yeah.
true to form,
No
Nicole has
pressure.
no idea what we're going to even talk about because I don't even know if Nicole even knows this, but Nicole, fun fact, Lisa basically ambushes me every single week on this podcast. I have no idea what we're ever going to talk about. I show up and she's like,
Great.
today I thought we would talk about, and I'm like, great. Sounds like a good idea. And I can't say no.
That's
so
cool.
we've stuck with the format, and it's the same thing that's going to happen with you here. So surprise, you get the
Awesome.
Australian co-host.
I love Australia.
Yeah, we've already talked about our shared local places, so it's good. And Nicole hasn't made fun of my accent that you normally do, so
Hey,
she's already.
well, she's got a lot of time with Matt, so they both have like the same
Yeah.
sort of conversation and time
Mhm.
zones. But there's a lot of things that I think we could talk about, and there's a lot of things I do want to talk about. But I think the most pressing thing here, maybe, I guess, as a backstory, as I'm not sure how much, if any, you've actually listened to the podcast. But generally, the point of the podcast is to talk about me dropping things. Is to talk about behaviors and behavioral-based conversations for affiliate owners, right? And so the reason I bring that up on this call is that in that framework, there's probably few people who are as uniquely incapable to talk about that as you are. And so that's one of the reasons why you were always like an ideal guest to bring on here. As somebody who myself personally was able to spend time at Roots and hang out there as a welcome guest and got to come eat dinner with the family. I can say that with certainty, obviously, much respected in the community as well. Like, you guys definitely do things very differently, but I think a lot of that has to do with the way that both you and Eric really approach that business, right? Because like, I think that you guys very, very much so see your affiliate very different than most other affiliates do. And now, as the person who has taken into that role, I think it'll be fun for you to, or for us to unpack that a little bit together and really kind of how you guys have been that way. And really what makes Roots tick.
Sure. Yeah. I'm sure I'll learn something along the way that I didn't realize we did.
Oh, no. Well, yeah. I mean, so let's start with the first. I haven't been to the new gym. How is the new gym, by the way?
It's awesome given the circumstances of why we moved. And I would be lying if I don't see it as a placeholder in Roots's trajectory.
Okay. I like that.
So
I like that conversation. Fair enough.
It's good. It's good.
I get to see it in a few weeks, so that's a good thing because I'll be there for a whole week and like whatever time flies now. So I've gotten these dates wrong internally a bunch of times. So anyways, listening to this, it's actually a client's going to be like, yeah, what is the actual date? I'm like,
you're like, I'm not really sure.
I'll get there when I get there. So anyway, as it applies to, I guess if you would, you are an OG person. So one of the things that's fun about this podcast is that I also am a dinosaur in the CrossFit world. So maybe people who don't know you besides who you are now, tell everybody the story about how you got started in CrossFit.
Oh man.
Jeez, here we go.
Well, I'd really have to look back through the archives. No, I'm kidding. It's been so long. Well, it was sort of like three things converged. I was working with a personal trainer. Like you signed up at Gold's Gym and you got like 3 personal training sessions.
Mm-hmm.
And his name was Rudy Nielsen, if that name rings a bell to anybody. And I was leaving for grad school and he was like, oh, you should check out this thing called CrossFit when you get up there. And I was in Philadelphia, which coincidentally is funny because if you've ever read the book, Learning to Breathe Fire, Jerry Hill was like under the underpasses in Philadelphia doing CrossFit with tires and, logs and things like that at the same time. But I never, unfortunately, crossed paths with him until later. But didn't really do anything. And then when I moved back to Boulder after grad school, my coworker, now husband, and I was kind of checking out the website one day and he was like, oh yeah, I've done some CrossFit before. And my brother was in the Marine Corps with Tosh, with Brian Shantosh. And so I'd kind of been hearing rumblings about it that way. So it's kind of like, okay, I'll go give it a try. And we went to Boulder CrossFit, which at the time was in a church basketball court in downtown Boulder. And there was only one class a day. It was at 5 p.m. And we went and that was pretty much it. I was hooked. I was done. We did 2 workouts and then we traveled back to DC for a work trip. And I was like, well, we got to do CrossFit when we go away for 3 days. And so we found CrossFit Old Town and it was Jerry Hill's place when he was in the jiu-jitsu studio. And I met Chris and Andrea who owned Trident CrossFit.
Yeah.
I just felt like, it was really, I think back to kind of all the chain events of things that happened. But from then on, it was all in 5 days a week, basically.
I think that's one of the reasons I love asking like all the OG, and now OG is a cool term, right? So like all the OGs in CrossFit, because like all of us have this weird serendipitous series of fortunate events where it was like this thing led to this thing when this chance encounter with this person, and like it was all these things. And one of the things that I am very sad and nostalgic about is just how cool it really was way back then. But I think that a lot of that is still alive now, and I think that's one of the things we can talk about in this podcast is that
for sure.
When we were back then and there was just the forum and it was like, what the hell is a kettlebell and how can I make something even look like a kettlebell, right? Or like, where do I even find a medicine ball, let alone, where am I going to throw it high enough and not get kicked out of a gym? And there was something about that sort of divorced community that we all were, where like we all converged every single night into the comment section or into that forum. And, moving forward, what I think is I'm nostalgic because I'm like, man, all those old days, what a great time. It was so cool. Like there's so many stories. And like I have so many great friends like you guys and everybody else that I'd met through that time because I think there was just like a weird bond. But now it's expanded to the point where that stuff still exists, but it just exists in so many more micro conversations. It's fascinating to talk to like newer people who are just as involved and just as invested. And I think it's pretty interesting to see like how we've actually kept that intact throughout, despite the fact that there's so many more moving parts of this thing now.
Yeah, and I think that's probably one thing at Roots that I've always felt really strongly about, even if I didn't really know, is keeping some connection to the past. Mm-hmm. And so of where we came from and why we started this. And even, just little things, when the gym, our very first gym, which was, 800 square feet to start, once we moved out of the garage was only 150 square feet. the gym needed to be painted, and all of our members like came out on a Friday and we painted the gym. And now and just because things have evolved, like I would be so embarrassed at this
Right.
point to be like, hey, everybody come help me paint the gym. However, we had a really cool experience when we moved the gym. That whole experience was awful. We were strapped for time. We were screwed over. And we didn't have a ton of resources because it was the middle of the pandemic. Like we'd been shut down for almost a year. And so finances weren't like super awesome. And our entire gym community came out and literally moved a 10,000 square foot gym it was like 4 hours.
Yeah.
It was 4 hours. I mean, it was insane. Trailers, trucks. It was like so all these vehicles converged and people were just, lifting stuff into trucks, and it happened. And I think that those experiences we can actually foster. I don't know if I would use the word create, but foster them and know that they really do serve a purpose as CrossFit evolves. The pictures that we have, we did this workout, we did move the gym for a time, which had always kind of been a fun, I don't know, thought in my head. I have these pictures of people walking down Pearl Street in Boulder with a air assault bike over their head and like dragging 345-pound plates
actually
down the street. And you can't, I had so many people that would text me and be like, I can't believe your members would do that. And I think that's, if you're all in on the idea and if your coaches are all in and they're like, yeah, this is what we're doing. It's only crazy if you like kind of put it out there like it's crazy, but if not, it's just like, yeah, this is a cool thing and this is how we're going to support, the bigger cause. And I guarantee that people will remember that for a decade, like painting the shop or any of the other random events that have happened that have sprung up that we kind of, called on our community and we didn't even really have to call, to be honest. People offered, they were just ready to help. So yeah, I think some of those experiences, they'll be for the people that were there, 20 years ago, 15 years ago. And then some of the experiences will be just created along the way. And that's still, still has that feeling for whether you've been doing CrossFit for a year or 5 years, you get a sense that it's just something's different.
I feel like it's a benchmark workout in every single CrossFitter's like, catalog, right? Like somebody inevitably at some point in your history in CrossFit, you've moved a gym for time, or at least been if you've not moved a rubber floor mat ever, like a stall
what are
mat,
we even doing? Right.
I assure you, if you need a good workout, all you got to do is go into your gym. Definitely ask the owner for advice, but go ahead and just grab that mat and move it around the gym a few times. You'll be like, no, and then realize that there's hundreds of them that are all meticulous.
Well, it's funny you said that. Yesterday, Eric and I moved, I don't know, I think he said 15,000 pounds of floor mat yesterday into a storage unit. So I have a very, very recent and real memory of that. And it's funny because our kids helped. And, they're sitting there trying to, the 4x6s were a little bit much for them, but the 2x2s they could move around. But that element of being an affiliate owner or and one of our long time friends, of course, showed up to help. And I was thinking, I was like, I think Scott's done this, 3 different times in the history of Roots for us. So all those little things definitely add up. And I think that's part of it. There is that balance between being a small business owner and some of the stuff you're going to outsource. But, I would say for Eric and I, that's definitely something that I didn't know was going to work out as well as it did. But I mean, Eric, anything the gym has ever needed or, organized or built or fixed or set up, whether it's on the tech side with the internet and the website or all the way through to, hand building our boxes or perfectly sinking the rig into the floor so that it's even with the floor and not set on top of the mats, like all that stuff is just, happens.
For sure. I think we should petition for stall mats being installed into the L1 kernel because like functionally there's no good way to move them. So somebody needs to talk about like the points of performance of moving these mats around.
And there's no good way to cut them either. Like,
no.
You have the 2x4 underneath and then you do the little blue line and you sit there with the razor blade over and over and over. it's not.
And no matter how much you try to avoid it, they are an inevitability in your journey. You will at some point
Yes.
have to move one of those mats. I don't
And
care
they're
what gym you work at or a part of, you are moving one of those mats.
And they're the
Period.
most overlooked part of the gym from the members. Like they come in, that's the floor, they do burpees and stuff on it. It's
Yeah.
not until, you know, they have to move
There's
somewhere.
a
I remember when
split.
and then they pick it up and it's like, oh, these are really heavy and awkward. Did you put all these in yourselves?
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, they just didn't.
Thanks.
And
Yeah, remember that.
when I first bought my gym, we had a temporary shed. So we just finished laying the flooring, like, you know, hundreds of mats. And then 5 minutes before it was finished, the real estate rang and said, oh, no, you've been approved for the other shed. So it was like, okay, let's go pick all those back up, put them back on the truck and let's move them again. It was like, there were a lot of favors owed then. It was a really, really big workout that day. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
And delightful.
All right, so let's move on from the rubber mats before we incite PTSD from every single one of us. Everyone is like,
I can't handle it.
I'm still in therapy for this. Are you kidding me? I don't want to talk about it. And then there's no way to get them to stay together. And then you got to get them locked in. And God forbid if they don't touch the wall. Anyway, so those are the old days. Now are the new days. You obviously wear and have worn tons of hats throughout your time in CrossFit, which is obviously a testament to both who you are and obviously the focus and your attention. One thing that I do think is worth mentioning too is that Eric is just not as many words as you are, but he definitely deserves, and I'm going to drag him on here someday. Somehow I'll get Eric to come on here and talk about his particular
podcast.
Did he?
Other day.
I am pumped about that. That means I'm going to be a second. I figured I'd start with this half of the household first. I'll warm him up when I'm out there and be like, you know, listen, I got this thing. You should do it. It's easy. You just got to talk a little bit and we'll facilitate it. Anyway, so you've worn a lot of hats. I think the hats that you wear now, in my opinion, I guess not so humbly, I think are the coolest hats that you wear. I think, you know, between like the L4 stuff coming back out and, you know, what you're doing with the affiliate stuff, I think is very cool. Really, generally speaking, what HQ's renewed vision and focus on perpetuating the affiliate model, I think is something that we're very excited about because it's one of the things that I think we all agree that we need, right? It's like if the affiliates are the answer to the world's most vexing problem, no doubt about it, like something's going to have to be done there. And I'm glad that there's a renewed focus there.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I guess we've talked about the beginning. So tell me a little bit about, I guess, what it's like now for Nicole with the new hats that you're wearing and what they, I mean, you're still at Roots full time. I know that for the most part, but tell me a little bit about what your focus is these days in the community and whatnot.
Well, I mean, from a Roots perspective, yeah, I mean, I'm there most every day. I coach. It, you know, it kind of ebbs and flows. I was coaching about 10 hours a week. I've got a kind of a giant stint here with the level 4 and some stuff we're doing to get that off the ground. So I've backed off a little bit there. But it's always that ebb and flow of like, you know, 10 hours. And then we kind of have this joke where it's like, you know, I'll be like, okay, we're in a good place. I'm going to like, I'll do this. And then all of a sudden, like a bunch of stuff gets dumped and it's like, oh, you got to reacclimate, you know, all the different things in your life. But, so coaching, just general, you know, I don't know. I think I'm kind of to the point. So now we have a general manager and, you know, I couldn't have asked to make that switch at a better time, I guess. I think, like you said, I've worn a lot of the hats. Like I've done everything at Roots. You know, I've done the front desk, I've done the website, I've done the drop-in procedures, I've done the retail, you know, I've done it all. And I think some of it, somebody else out there in the world could do it better than I did. And a lot of it was set up, but it was just not as efficient as it could have been. And then some of it was just like, hey, we need to do this just better, period. And so a lot of the stuff that I do now is not the day-to-day operations. It's more the, you know, big picture stuff of what do you want to do, trying to figure out, are we going to move the gym? That's always a big one that takes a lot more time than you would ever think. And then coach development. So that that will never go away.
Sure. So
that's a big thing. I observe classes each week. I take class 4 to 5 days a week. And that's kind of that's the thing that I will always keep, you know, sure, in my affiliate piece. And then on the CrossFit side, yeah, my two main things for CrossFit HQ are the professional coach and then the level 4. And so the level 4, obviously, you know, it was a long time coming, and something that I'd always felt connected to, and I had also worked on since 2012 at various
Yeah.
points where we had tried to get it back to life. And then about a year ago, the person that had been managing it was moved to a different, you know, kind of took on a different role. And I'd been working on it just kind of under him. And I was like, this is like my dream to try to get this back out there for CrossFit and do that. So yeah, I feel really fortunate right now. I feel like I don't, you know, I think a lot of times people are thinking like career aspirations, and I like, if I just did this,
Yeah.
I'd be really happy, you know, I'd
sure.
be really happy for a long time, forever, to keep, you know, moving the level 4 forward, getting it into more countries and into more places, and really helping coaches have something to aspire to, so that the whole CrossFit coaching world can keep seeking out how to be better
Yeah.
and pursuing something.
And
And then and then there's the family side. And there's the other third.
that can't be
kids and
overlooked
things
because
like
they're fantastic.
that.
They're going to be on their own episode without you and Erica on. We're just going to put both of them on here and the dog, so it'll be fine.
That would be funny.
That would be hilarious. We're gonna
It's
do it.
funny what happens when your kids like grow up in an affiliate.
Yeah.
There's just some really funny things that, like cool things. Now that I'm that they're 9 and 7, I'm kind of like, oh, that's cool.
They have very strong personalities too, which I think, and I say strong not in like the over the top, like sort of like some kids they call strong personalities because they're just assholes. Your kids are not. They're very, very interesting humans, I think. But one of the things that's hard to do on this podcast is try to, especially because I know some of you guys so well personally, is try to encapsulate and articulate the type of people that you guys are, your characters and your personalities, and the kids as well, especially, but particularly as it applies to like people like yourself and EC, because your work comes across first, right? And so everybody knows most of you guys for your work. And I think one of the things that's hard for me in these podcasts is, how do I get people to really, truly understand how much Nicole really cares about this stuff? Because what I think is really very cool in the cross world is I don't think anybody involved in it is a bad actor, even if you're doing it poorly. But there's a handful of people who are, in my opinion, in charge of some of the endeavors and efforts they're truly some of like the coolest people on the planet. And so when the L4 obviously landed squarely on your feet by probably your own sort of nudging and encouragement, but like,
I definitely said, this is what I want to do.
Right. And I think, honestly, we had talked about that the last time I was out there, was because like you had stepped away for a while and like I was considering it. And like you were like, I would love to come back in, sort of that type of role. But there wasn't really a vision of what the L4 was going to be like at that point, because that was like 4 or 5 years ago, I think, at this point. But, my point, I guess, is that there's very few people who are as passionate about the development of a professional coach as both yourself, the other Nicole, I guess, because now it's just the Nicoles, right? But like you guys, and it's hard, and I think people know that. But one of the things that I was like, how do I get that point across? But like, and then the L4 thing kind of just unfolded, and I didn't realize it was happening, and I was like, slow clap. Now I don't even have to, because like it's essentially been like, now you've become like the scion of that thing. So I'm like, she's the perfect person to do it, and I'm pumped that you're the one that's kind of spearheaded it. But that aside, I guess one question I have about the L4 is, it's a massive mountain to scale for a lot of people, right? Which is a fantastic pursuit, and I'm glad that it's back there because it gives people that point of reference far in the future. Where do you see that falling inside like the average affiliate? What do you think about that in terms of their pursuit as an affiliate owner or people inside an affiliate?
I mean, I think that I do. I truly think that every affiliate is capable of having a level 4 coach.
I knew that's what you were going to say. That's why I asked you that. Yeah,
and I think we have to go all the way back to 2010, and think about what's happened in the past decade. And so, when I went and did the level 2, which was kind of the old level 4 now, right? In 2009, Like that was CrossFit structuring what good coaching looked like.
Mm-hmm.
You went to that and they either said yes or they said no.
Yeah.
And when the level 4 went away, or the old level 2, it was at a time when there were so many people taking the level 1, and CrossFit was growing so fast. And it's not that anyone, this is my opinion, by the way, but it's not that anyone could have foreseen this, but without that aspirational element of what good coaching was, and also CrossFit defining it, because so many people outside of CrossFit, have tried to come in and be like, well, this is what good coaching is, or, all you have to do is be like a really nice person and have a great experience. Well, that's bullshit. Like, and so there were other voices kind of saying what good coaching was. And we didn't have that standard of like, this is what it looks like to be a great coach within CrossFit. And so I think that it just kind of muddied the waters, and in the same way, like, this might be a bad analogy, but if you think about it, like, remember when regionals went away?
Mm-hmm.
And so it just kind of, everyone was like, oh, well, I guess there's nothing to aspire to. Or maybe better analogy is like, if you go to the regionals as an athlete and you get 6th place, right? You either say, man, I've got some weaknesses that I need to fix, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to be in a top 5 spot and I'm going to qualify. Or you say, CrossFit is stupid. I've hated this sport forever and I'm moving on. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is that the people that stay right there and they work their weaknesses and they fix it and they go back the next year, like that same progression evolution is what we're creating with the level 4 in a way. Mm-hmm. Where you might go and you might not pass. And that's as much of a developmental process as passing, in the sense that, like, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
There's been times where I've gone and I've, had someone evaluate my class, or I've coached something and I've sat there and I'm like, oh my God, I never even would have thought of that. Right. And so a lot of that aspiration and refinement of what we're actually trying to become as coaches went away for a decade. And I think that while it seems like a really big hurdle right now, because if you think about it, the level 4 has been live for 3 months. We haven't, but it's going to raise the standard everywhere. It's going to give people something to aspire to, and also something for them to look at and say, this is right and this is wrong. Like, there are wrong ways to coach.
For sure.
In CrossFit. And so I absolutely think that it is more than possible, and something that every CrossFit gym should aspire to. Because if you think about it, like, how do you help your athletes? They need, when I say help, care, meaning they need to get results.
Mm-hmm.
And so if someone's been in your, gym for 6-7 years and they're still diving their knees in on a push press, and they still don't finish the rep at the top of the push press, and they still can't do a kipping pull up because they haven't been taken through a good nutritional protocol to help them move that, like, that's coaching.
For sure.
And so if we can do that better, then when you talk about, solving the world's most vexing problems, well, we can make real change and a real impact on that. And it's not necessarily by saying, like, you got the stamp of the level 4, but it's everything that you have to gain in that process to be able to pass something like that I think is what's really going to help coaches just be better for their affiliates.
Yeah, to that point, I think it's almost like there should more so be an expectation that you're gonna probably fail, right? Because that's just part of the journey. Is where, like, that's the feedback, that's the process. Like, if you go, sure, you might probably go in, and hopefully you do go in and you do pass it, but, like, that is part and parcel part of the journey, to be like, you don't know what you don't know until you get there from somebody who does it. You have no real idea what your blind spots are, right? And I think that's. But the reason I asked that question, though, is because we don't really parade a lot of our clients' accolades very much, because it's not one of our things. We believe in them and this, their pursuits, et cetera. So, but the other day, one of our clients did pass her L4, so we posted it, and from that, I got a barrage of questions, which were, "How do you think this fits in? Should I do this? Is this a thing?" I'm like, whoa. Pump the brakes. And I was like, funny enough, I actually have, the person, but I didn't tell any of them this, but I was like, did not expect any of that feedback. And then it occurred to me, I was like, wow, the community really has, to your point, right? Like, because it has been so long since we had gotten to that point of identification of like, what is a coach? We've all kind of like they fragmented and they've gone in their own different directions of their own selection, their own volition, which is great. I think it's amazing. But one of the things that's important to us, and we talk about a ton on this podcast, is the difference between training and coaching. And there's a massive difference in those two things, and in my opinion. And it's not necessarily that it's in alignment with what the CrossFit model is, but it's essentially in that, like, training is about your ability to teach and educate, right? You're basically a teacher. Right? Coaching is your ability to understand and help and create and make behavioral change in people. And so, like, and the reason why that's important is not the semantics of that. It's that it's very hard in an industry like this where anybody can be a coach, right? Like, I get to choose that title, right? Not necessarily inside the ecosystem of CrossFit, but like, we share the landscape with every influencer under the sun who's like, I'm a coach. I'm like, no, the fuck you're not. Like, it makes me so mad. And so many, and I've always said, I was like, I will die on my soapbox of understand until people understand that there is a difference between coaching and training. There's nothing wrong with trainers, but it's that coaches, there is an ascension that is necessary to get to that point. And you know, you see them when you're around somebody who makes that point of coaching, it's a very different reality, right? There's way less teaching, there's way less talking, there's way more understanding, there's way more listening. And in that part of it, I'm just so happy that the model now has a point of acceptance and recognition where people are like, oh. And so throughout those conversations in the inbox, I was like, you guys have missed the point, right? Because a lot of them were level 3s, right? They're like, isn't that good enough? I'm like, just go ahead and look at the title of it. Just
but really, like, and even that part, even that with the level 3, you know, it's not the same. You can pass the MCAT,
right?
And you can go to medical school, and then when it gets to the actual application of that knowledge in the moment, when it matters, there are people that aren't good at that. And so I think, you know, the level 3 paired with the level 4, you've got the foundational knowledge to be able to go and do great things. But then, I mean, it's no different than, well, and then you've got and then when you pass the level 4, it's saying, and I can put my money where my mouth is. And it's no different than if I sat here and I was like, well, I have read about Fran and I can do pull-ups and I can do thrusters. So I probably have a 3-minute Fran.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I've got the knowledge base and I've got some like pieces, but like, have you ever done Fran? Nope. You know, it's like, you need to be able to have both. And it's funny because as CrossFitters, you know, there's a lot of talk, sometimes rhetoric about, you know, we do the hard things and we don't cheat reps and we do all these things. And then when I've talked to some people and they're like, well, you know, the level 3, like that, you know, I can pass that academic test or that test and it seems good enough. I'm like, yeah, but don't you want that next piece? And is it scary? Yes. I mean, I think back to when I prepared for the old level 2, and then I actually did what the new format. I went through that in 2017 as part of our development process, and I remember the raters were EC and Boz and Nicole Carroll, and that's nerve-wracking, you know, like, but the preparation and the process, it's such a good, important component in any career to spend, you know, your 3 months preparing for your level 3. Like, you're going to really deep dive and you might not maintain that level, that every piece of that knowledge forever. That's okay. But it's part of the process of doing that is what pushes you on and then, you know, prepares you to do something like the level 4. And I think the level 4 is the same way. You know, spend 3 months really diving in and getting ready for those 2 specific hours, and it will make you better.
There's definitely a universal trait that, you know, seems to be present among like all of like the higher level coaches that, you know, that exist that are recognizable. And that thing is that I think it's obvious from within like 5 minutes spending time with them that they're just all students of life, right? Like, they just never stop learning. And that includes people like yourself. And even like, unknown great coaches that live inside, the four walls of affiliates on a day-to-day basis that, haven't been around long enough to gain the publicity. But
yeah,
for years, I led the gymnastics seminar and basically implored everybody at the end of it, maybe insensitively, but to be like, the day you stop learning, please just leave. Like, I'm glad you were here. I'm glad you invested the time. But the day you've decided that, like, enough, you are a danger to this entire thing. And that's, it was a little bit bold, but it was meant to get the point across. But it's really to that point, right? Like, if you're not going to keep climbing the ladder, you're not going to keep learning, you're not going to keep investing in that skill set. It's hard. And I'm glad that there's another rung to the ladder, because I think that, like, a lot of people they deviated from the L3 to be like, that's a test, right? Like, but the L4 is a very different calling, where it's like, your peers are going to tell you definitively, objectively, are you doing a good job, or what you think you do a great job of every single day. And a lot of people are going to hide from it. And a lot of people are going to be like, I need to do that. And that's the big
and I think that's the same thing we see play out with people that, they don't sign up for the open, but they do all the workouts on the side, right? It's safe, right? Just go put your hat in the ring, go try it. I think that also, because it's so new, there's a lot of unknown right now. And the more people that take it, and the more people that pass and can share their experience and can mentor coaches in their area, which I think that has such an incredible potential for CrossFit. It's not just about, you passing the level 4. Then you can become of service to the entire CrossFit coaching world, because you're at a level that you can mentor people. And that makes every affiliate better. And so I think there will be this, I do think there will be this really cool trickle down effect that will spread throughout the affiliates.
I think one of the things, go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah, I was going to say, that was pretty much the conversation I had with my client yesterday, who had passed her L4, going, what are your opportunities now to, raise the tide for everybody else? And how can you leverage, now that you've got this and your skill, and, make the most of your, audience that you have? Because she's, not your typical aesthetic coach image. And I said, you've got a lot of people that love what you have to say. Like, this is your chance to encourage them, even as far as getting an L1 and then, progressing. And, now that all the levels are complete, how many affiliate owners have had that age-old argument? Oh, my L1's due to expire. Do I revalidate, or do I go for my L2? Now there's this full pathway. There's this, to just revalidate is not really it shouldn't really be an option for people to even consider now, because you've got very clear steps. And, in my conversation with her was very much about, you can help people even start that process in the level 1. They're like, oh, well, if you can be here, I can at least try here, and then start.
I couldn't agree more. Journey. Yeah, absolutely. And just, I do think, that is one of the things that I do, we're not fully up to, we're not fully working on right now, but it is in our plan of, when you look at, there's the intrinsic value of wanting to be a better coach, right? But then let's also be real. Like, there's a financial element, right? And we're all trying to make a living, and we're trying to support our families and things like that. And if you become a level 4, the opportunities to mentor and to, and I don't mean mentor for free, but to create internships, to create it's something I've always wanted to do at Roots, but just, never really got around to. But I always wanted to do an internship. And come out to CrossFit Roots for 3 months and live in Boulder.
Okay.
And
I'll be out soon.
I'm booking
but
a flight.
It's something that, right? Okay. Oh, great. We'll do this live next time. But and I think that part of the reason I haven't is because I just feel very. It was always balanced with, well, I don't want to. I want to make sure that I'm giving my team, my staff at Roots, my full attention whenever I can. But those opportunities are there for the taking.
For sure.
Because once you've proven yourself that you can have the academic understanding of what is CrossFit, and then proving that you can apply it under the umbrella of CrossFit,
Yeah.
I think that anybody would be, anybody that wants to grow their coaching should be looking for those people that have passed the level 4.
Well, I think that's the part of it that's so valuable with it, right? And I think one of the things that probably did happen, and it's not really necessarily a knock against the L3, is that a lot of people found themselves passing the L3 and nothing changed, right? Where they're just like, they thought that like, there was, because they became this rare thing. But to that point that you just made, is the L3 was it was just a demonstration that you understood the method, the model, et cetera. If there wasn't really a conversation of a definitive acceptance that like you could actually coach this thing and develop this thing and do it. But the L4
Totally.
is very different in that regard. And
Yeah.
I think
And that's a normal, progression in in a profession, right? You kind of have to first be taught it, and then you have to understand it at the methodology at the academic level of
your
testing.
MCAT thing.
And then, and then you've got the practical application. No, I completely agree on that piece. I think, with the level 3 and people not really getting the accolades, I think we need to do a better job as affiliate owners too. And I know it's scary at first thought, but my coaches get a raise when they pass the level 3. They get a bonus. They get a $3,000 bonus.
Yeah.
There'll be a even bigger bonus if they pass a level 4. So I do think that balance between the intrinsic value of wanting to be a better coach and just loving what you do, awesome. I think we also have to back it up and acknowledge that, we can't just say as affiliate owners, like, I hope they want to get better,
Right.
And leading the way
sure would
too,
be good.
Yeah, it'd be really awesome. So I think that there's something there too that we have to start getting those pieces squared away so that there's this dual reason that people want to pursue higher credentials.
I mean, I think the L4 makes sense of the L3. I think it really defines its journey a lot more. And I think I was obviously always designed to be the way it was. It just, there was so many moving parts to L4 logistically and otherwise. It was just like, I promise one day it's coming, right? Like, and so, I think that.
I know. Believe me.
Nobody knows it better than you do. And I only know it from like a handful of like sidebar conversations where I was like, I never thought of that. That's crazy. Yeah. It's a whole lot.
It was funny. When the level 4 launched, I posted this photo of Eric, Dave Castro, and Harriet, our daughter, at the ranch. And Harriet is a baby. Like, she's an infant. And that was the first time I worked on a level 4 development. And Harriet's 9 now.
Yeah,
so maybe I'd done one before that. But right. So it was just sort of funny. And I was like, no, like, you on one hand, you can be like, oh, I can't believe it's taken this long. And on the other hand, it's like, you know what? There were so many iterations to really get it right. And there were so many moments of thinking about, what does the evaluation need to look like to support the affiliate?
Yeah.
And to be true to the affiliate and the environment that we coach.
For sure.
So I'm super proud of it. I think we're in a good spot for everybody.
I'm pumped about it, but I think continuing that conversation back to roots, because that's what we're actually here for. I didn't even actually really want to talk that much about the L4, but I knew it was going to come up and it would be a big part of the conversation in regards to doing things really, really well. Let's talk about roots a little bit. But so there's like 4 conversations I want to have, but I really want to talk about this one more important than anything. So Roots has been, how long has Roots been an affiliate now?
We turned 15 this year.
Wow, that's crazy. Time does really truly fly. Minus the 3 years that COVID was a gap, but the rest of it.
9, maybe I'm off by 1 year. No, we're a 14-year affiliate. Yeah.
I don't know if I speak for everybody in the audience, but I can say that there's a handful of affiliates that when you think of, an affiliate doing things really, really well, Roots is definitely one of them that's always perpetually in the top of the conversation. And myself, as somebody who coaches affiliate owners every single day. It's a constant point of reference, mainly that I have a lot of personal experience with it, both all of you guys, the whole family, et cetera. But I've spent time there and I get it. And one thing that I want to talk to you about this was essentially, what has always been fascinating to me about Roots is that not only are you guys Roots, but in that same framework, you have done a fantastic job of something that we try to talk to so many affiliate owners about, and that is that you maintained your identity, which is the sort of like the ethos of what it means to be an affiliate, right? That individuality, and like you guys encapsulate that, and you've crystallized like what it means to be Roots, but at the same time, understanding your role in the mission of being an affiliate in the larger landscape of affiliates. Does that make sense to you? And that's my interpretation from the outside, and knowing both, the responsibility and the professional roles that you guys both have, both you and Eric, as well as like just how you approach unlocking that gym every single morning. I think that part's cool.
I mean, I take the key. No, I'm kidding.
Please tell us. What's the code? What's the code to get in?
Yeah, what's the code, right? Where's the hidden key? So I don't know. I think, well, a couple of things. One, when people say, Roots does things really well, I always have kind of chuckled because all we've really done is taken what Greg wrote and applied it.
Yeah.
And we've held the line really hard, I would say, on applying it. But I mean, everything that we did, I would say, for the first 5 years was definitely right from keep the bathroom super clean, don't grow until you're bursting at the seams, don't buy a bunch of stupid equipment, keep it, give people one workout a day with a shit ton of coaching. And that's what we did.
Mm-hmm.
We had nothing fancy. Yeah, and it worked. It really worked. And then, as we got bigger, when we moved to the big gym, so we went from 2,100 square feet to 10,000. It was the same thing. It was just this really committed approach to doing CrossFit and doing and staying true to the methodology. I always joke that we're CrossFit purists. If I see a dumbbell curl going on in my gym, I'm kind of like, ugh. And I don't get me wrong, I've done a dumbbell curl, in my life.
Dave was there for a while. We already know there was curls that happened in the gym. So
yeah, although that's okay. So here's a good example of staying true to what you do is, so Dave and Camille trained at Roots for a long time, and Dave started to get into the powerlifting stuff, and he filmed a video one day of him doing a bunch of like bodybuilding shit with Roots' logo in the back. And I was like, no.
Yeah.
No. Like that's the type of stuff that, we didn't offer a class on that. Dave and Camille are wonderful, and they did their thing, and that was fine. But I think you just have to be hyper aware of what you're doing, why you're doing it, and what message it sends. And so I think if I had to say like what we've done is we vet a lot of things. And when I say I even know like with my general manager sometimes, like I think in the beginning she was like, wait, why don't we do that? And I'm like, it's going to take me a while to really articulate in my head why we don't do that, but I can tell you we don't do that. Yeah. And I think it starts to make sense, little things. We don't scale up. Nobody at CrossFit Roots scales up. Go faster. I can go faster. No, but like just little things like that. We actually started making a list of this a while ago because we had a coach come in that like didn't know some of the things, and all my staff is like, why wouldn't they know that? Or like, why would they even think differently? And I'm like, well, let's be, I'm guilty of the same thing. I'm like, why would you do that? But so we started to make another, I have a visitor here. Sorry. We have a 1.5-year-old lab that is very playful.
I haven't met that one yet. I'm excited.
No, you haven't. Yeah. He's a sweetheart. He's working hard to be as amazing as a dog as Cash, our other lab was, but we're getting there. But so I think that you just have to I think that's been our greatest asset, is that for whatever reason, we learned about CrossFit and we believe in CrossFit at a level that just honestly, it allowed us to see how freaking well CrossFit worked.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you think about it, CrossFit Roots has been following the main site on a 2-week delay for 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's been small instances where we, you know, there was one 6-month period where we did something different. And it was always still one workout a day and it was CrossFit and all these different things. But we like the main site works.
Yeah.
When you talk about GPP and getting people fit and all the things that you hear over and over, like muscle ups are too hard to coach, or, oh, I don't know how we could do this workout in our gym and stuff. It's sort of like by us being just really stubborn. I mean, because it is stubborn, and saying like, no, we are not changing the workout because it's hard to coach. It's hard on the space. It's going to be a little bit of chaos. It's going to take more organization. It's almost like we got to just really see how well CrossFit works.
Mm-hmm.
And then that also forced our coaches to be better. So I don't know if it's not a really great answer in the sense of like, I'm not really a goal person where I'm like, these are my goals. I hate goals. I don't do that. But yeah, we really just took what Greg wrote and said and did, and we've just been stubbornly committed to doing it like that for 15 years.
I mean, that's literally the reason that I wanted to bring you on the podcast, right? Was that exact thing. And there might be a handful of underlying reasons as to why you had the confidence in, you know, the ability to stay true to that version. But like, there's no doubt we've all weathered this storm of like, you know, call it the pre-Bach or the post-pre-Bach era, whatever it was. But there's definitely this time when like things got complicated, right? But that's just the nature of like all evolution, where like, we just think that like we need to make things more complicated because like we got to fix it, even though it was never broken. And the one thing that I can say for sure is that, you know, Roots has identifiably stuck to that elegance, right? That simplicity. And I think that is the piece that cannot be overstated, is that in a world now where there's no shortage of people who will show up in affiliate owners' inboxes offering to give them these solutions and systems and models and all these things. And I'm like, it has been free for you to implement literally since the beginning, not just the workouts, but like just go watch the videos, get out the pencil and piece of paper until that is so complicated you need to go to the computer, right? Like, and the whole thing has always just been right there. But, you know, obfuscation is the curse of the novice, right? We want to overcomplicate everything. And the thing that has always been very cool is that you guys have, like you just said, like you stuck to .com when everybody was like Metcon and strength and like this, and then they had endurance, they had all these things. And it's like, you know, going back to the roots, pun intended, of what CrossFit is, right? Is like, is it improving fitness, right? And so nobody was doing that when they came out with these classes. And so like what Roots was able to say was that like, we're minimum effective dose, maximum amount of output, maximum amount of return on investment. And we don't need to change any of these things. And you had all these other gyms trying to give people what they wanted, right? And I was like, those all make a lot of sense, but are they objectively improving fitness? Or are they just
and I think that's the heart. And that one, I've had a lot of conversations with affiliate owners over the years where I think that's been, and I don't know, I mean, I don't know why we've been fortunate in that standpoint, or what I would have to think about it, but you know, we hold a line, and we're okay losing a member or two. You know, we had somebody that, you know, basically, you know, that we you know, you'll get the emails about like, why don't you do strength and Metcon, or and I'll be an ass for a second. You know, it's always like the day after that there's a workout with pistols and they couldn't do pistols and they got relegated to a box, or, you know, and I'm okay with that, because that actually, when you think about the people that come to Roots, there is this common level of being okay with not being good at something. And I don't know, you know, if you don't have a level of programming and then backing from coaches to say, okay, you know, half the class can't do this. Okay, great. Well, let's figure out how you can do it one day. And so then you're coached through, you know, every scaling option that's going to move the needle forward, and you continue to come. It does create this thing where everybody is always exposed in some way. No one's ever just like, well, I can always do the strength and the any asshole metcon, and I'm always going to be up at the top. And I say any asshole metcon, that's the old Pat Sherwood phrase that we used to joke about. But I think that's the thing, is that maybe I didn't know that all the pieces just would fit together so well.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not like there's one thing. It's like transference in CrossFit, right? Like, why do you get better at, the push jerk by being able to do more pull-ups? Or, why does your handstand walking or your push jerk improve because you can walk on your hands further? Like, it's transference, right? You're getting all these capacities by training all these different things. And I think that a lot of the same stuff is true for roots, that it's not just like we did these two things and that made a difference. It's that it just somehow synergistically fueled everything.
Yeah, it's that central concurrence, right? I mean, it's the beauty of, CrossFit. Like, I think one of the more standout things I'll never forget from like my first L1 was just the understanding of like, what's the point of mixing your grip in a deadlift? Why don't you just go both overhand? I'm like, what a no-brainer, right? Now, like, I feel like 30 years ago at this point, but like that small little nuance was so quintessential to what was the L1 experience to me way, way, way back then, right? And so I think if I'm so bold as to tell you what makes you unique, I think the one thing that really truly makes Roots unique is that you guys understand what is CrossFit, right? Like, and that's a very important part of it's a very subtle sort of way of saying it, and it's a very complex notion. But the thing that I can say, obviously, is the person who's responsible for the L4, and otherwise, like, there's very few people on the planet besides, probably Greg and a handful of people maybe otherwise that could say what is CrossFit as well as you can. And so I think in that moment, the one thing that really separates a lot of the unfortunate situations in affiliates is that everybody can define CrossFit, constantly very functional movement, but very few people can tell you the application and the implementation of CrossFit. They don't really understand the what is CrossFit of the what is CrossFit part of it. And I think, there's obviously very few people, again, who could do that as well as you can. And that has just infiltrated every single step of the confidence in the position that is Roots.
And I think, so it's interesting you say that, because I think something that I've always felt strongly about, but just separate of that element, was just that I wanted my coaches to feel empowered to have those conversations as well. And I wanted our members to know what is CrossFit. And I think that, it's sort of like if if somebody plays baseball with you, but you never give them the rule book, it's going to be really hard for them to be like, well, why am I out? Or why wouldn't I just keep running around the bases, right? And it's kind of the same thing with your members. Like, if you never teach them what is CrossFit and what is GPP and why we want you to go faster rather than go longer, and why we want you to increase work capacity across broad time and modal domains and do the things you suck at and all that, then when they come and they do a workout, and it's their second workout ever, and you scale them to 3 rounds and they finish like third in the class, and they're like, should I go do another round? That's like such a beautiful moment for the coach to say, hey, no, actually, this is what we look at. And, if you were able to push a little bit harder, this is where we would go. We're not looking for volume. All those things are just these perfect opportunities to help build the culture of why you're doing what you're doing. However, if your coaches can't have that conversation, then they can't have it with the members. And if the members don't have that, and so I think that that is something that it's something that we do, and something that I think helps our members have these aha moments along the way, and really be able to help athletes not be like, well, maybe I'll go to Orange Theory because I don't know if I burned that many calories on my Apple Watch today.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, we've long said that, the most overlooked part of fitness in 100 words is the most important part of fitness in 100 words. And it's the last sentence, right? It's that regularly learn and play new sports. Everybody thinks it means like go play kickball, right? And like, it might mean go play kickball, but the point is like, you have to understand what's the point of all of this. And if you don't, you're going to miss the whys for the whats. And I think we talk about that a lot here. It's a recurring theme, is the absence of whys, what's become whys. And that's the thing that like centrally becomes the conflict in CrossFit, where people don't understand the why of CrossFit, like what its application is, bigger picture, so that it becomes the whats. It becomes the Metcon, it becomes more Metcons, it becomes intervals, it becomes all these things. And I guess there's probably worse things to do, right? But none of that is central to the what is or really why is CrossFit, right? And I think that that's the thing that Roots has always crushed it in that regard. And I can say that having sat and watched enough of the classes and experienced it and otherwise, there's two things that I've told people so many times about the time that I've spent at Roots. And the first one is that not only you, but all of your coaches did a remarkable job of actually coaching the classes like the classes were full of coaches. And that to me was never lost on me. And I was like, I think that's where you and I had always gotten along, is because I always had the same sort of understandings that, like, what's the point of training a person versus different than I would train a professional coach? Because, like, the better I become as a coach, the better I'm going to be as an athlete. So doesn't it just make more sense to just teach them the entire thing? And and that was sort of central to what was the open source model of CrossFit, where it's like, as somebody who came into the training world trying to find anybody to teach me more, it wasn't until I found CrossFit where I was just like, wow, look at all this information that somebody's willing to share for free. This is crazy. And so you guys did a really, really good job. And just sitting and watching the classes, being like the way that they were ran, how they were ran, the way they were communicated and put together was, that part of it was, I thought, was very, very impactful. But the second part of it, which was a super actionable thing, and it basically framed a big part of a lecture for me in the gymnastics course, was that, like, you just let all the coaches write the lesson plan. And the way that you did that was so simple and so elegant and so stupid, honestly, that I was like, why wasn't I doing that, right? And so inside there was a very powerful—
I remember having that conversation, actually.
Yeah. And I was like, I think my jaw hit the floor, because I was like, oh my God, what an epiphany, right? Like, and it was the essential sort of like making something more complicated, literally for the sake of making it more complicated, right? Like all these affiliate owners writing all this programming, right? Spending all this time writing these lesson plans, all this time teaching these lesson plans and delivering them to these coaches, and then being like, you did a bad job with the lesson plan. Like, it solved the whole problem. And just so you guys didn't know, and I'll just talk over Nicole here, like, they followed .com every day, and every one of the coaches alternated writing the lesson plans. And then everybody else got to review the lesson plan. Right. And I was like, and to this day, at every seminar I've ever taught, I said, the mark of an expert coach versus a novice coach, in my opinion, exists in their ability to write an effective and engaging lesson plan. And I gave some of that head nod to Denise as well, but like, there is truly, that's where the whole conversation we just had is encapsulated. Like, your ability to understand and articulate the what is CrossFit is 100% present in your ability to put together a class. And it was so obvious in Roots. And I was like, and that's how they got it.
And I think but I also think when you talk, it's a good example of, like, we didn't know that this was going to have such an impact at the point. At the time, it was like, well, we're all going to share the load. I have my biases, I have my things that I like to put in a lesson plan. So if I write every lesson plan, then it's going to be, one, that's too much work as an affiliate owner. And so it was a way for us to all kind of put our, secret sauce on the workout of the day under the context of the warm up and the general warm up and the specific warm up and all that. There's also something that's like, if you write a shitty lesson plan, or if you write a good one, like, you're accountable not just to yourself. You're not just teaching your own class, but you're accountable to the whole group. And I think sometimes, obviously I'm a big fan of my team, and I just think they're all, I don't know. Sometimes I just don't understand how we've gotten so lucky on just having great coaches and these great people, because there's just this fun about it, just with the lesson plans and that they're written and how they're written. And, if somebody punts the timeline, somebody will walk in and be like, oh, you're at 42 and you haven't started yet. Like, cause they know the lesson plan. And like, it's just this, it just ties us together in another way. It's just so damn fun. And it is, you're also you want to write a good lesson plan for the team. You want to do a good job for everybody. So I love that part. And it also allows them to, when they go to a gymnastics course, they go to the weightlifting course, they get to put some of that flavor
bring it back.
Their day. Yeah. And that's just always, and they see that, they've got a different algorithm on their Instagram. So they see different progressions and they see different ways to scale things. And so it really does help everybody But yes, I also agree that, and I've watched it, as coaches come on, and the first time their lesson plans are really basic, and we're reviewing them every time. And then, I would say it's probably a 1.5-year process, to be honest,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to take any workout, know the time domain, know where the upper limit should be, and to be able to confidently say at the whiteboard, this workout should put everybody in a 28 to 35-minute time domain. And then for you to go and for 24 people, this was a Saturday class I'm thinking about, for 24 people, know how to scale based on what you see and how the warm-up's going and how it looks. Every single person, so you are confident that all 24 people are going to finish under 35 minutes. That's good coaching. Like, that's like kind of jaw dropping when you think about it. It's not just like a suggestion, like everyone should finish under 35. It's no, everyone is going to, because that's the intended stimulus.
And it's such an important part of it, though, that is just so overlooked on accident, I think, where it's like, no affiliate owner is doing it because they felt like they were doing something malicious, right? Like, it's one of those things where it's like, it's been available to you. You just didn't really think that, like, just as simple as it could be. And in that process of writing that, and you're right, it is so fun when, like, the coaches, because it's really kind of, it's like a backdoor, like, locker room. They're like, what were you thinking with that progression, dude? Right? Like, and they're like, I don't know, it seemed like a good idea. And like, because you have like a whole week to research and come up with it, they come up with these harebrained things, and you're like, where did you find that? And what backdoor of YouTube were you searching where you found that progression that do that? And like, that took up 72 minutes of a 15-minute class. Like, how is that even going to work? They were like, I don't know. Right. Like,
but
and
like,
it's just,
isn't that a beautiful way to learn, though? Like,
that's what I'm saying. Right. It's
where you, there's this like funny part, and they're like, oh, well, I'm not going to do that again. And it's like, I used to, my warm-ups would always just go long. So I would always be like cutting a round out of my warm-ups. And then, I'd have to tell everybody like, hey, cut a round out. And then we had a newer coach, and he was doing the same thing. And I was sitting there, I was like, I've been there, dude. I know exactly what this is like. But it's not just someone telling you. You have to experience it for yourself. And I think that, I don't know, it's so fun.
It's upstream and downstream accountability.
Locker room.
Yeah.
Fun thing with the coaching.
It's fun. I guess, because now it's like an inside joke. Will you give everybody the cliff notes of what this is? Because I think we haven't actually explained to them how this works, because you and I are talking back and forth. Like,
right. So, okay. So basically every coach, so we have 2 5:30 classes every day. So there's always 2 coaches that show up, but one coach every day of the week is assigned to write the lesson plan. So like, Lindsay has Mondays, and then Jenny has Tuesdays, and then Eric has Wednesdays. So they have the same day every week. But so then Eric knows that he's always writing the lesson plan for Wednesday's class. So then the lesson plan goes in, and then every coach for that whole day, whatever hour they're coaching, is going to use that lesson plan. And so,
and talk a lot of shit when it goes really badly, because inevitably that's part of the fun, is like, you're going to write a bad lesson plan, and everybody's going to be like, Eric, what the hell? And you're like, oh, I thought it would work.
It's also cool too, though, like the lesson, I mean, people don't totally appreciate it maybe the way that I do, just because I'm proud of them. But I mean, every single class at Roots starts on time and ends 1 minute or on the hour, every single hour, every single day.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think about the execution of that across stimuluses and how long the workout's going to take people, and having a different set of athletes every class, like that to me is just, it's so freaking cool. I don't think that always gets noticed, but if it wasn't that way, I think it would get noticed. But to really think about managing all those different things going on, and to do it that consistently, is just, I just think they don't see that it's that big of a deal, but it's a really big deal.
I also worry that people listening to this are going to be like, really? That's the nugget you give me, is like, write a lesson plan? But like, here's the thing about that.
And end on time.
Yeah. One of my big fears, of course, was that when CAP rolled out, it was going to standardize lesson planning for everybody, because here's what ends up happening, right? Like on accident, every single affiliate owner turns their coaches into proctors. They're not thinking critically. They're not thinking creatively. They're not problem solving. They're not trying to think differently about what they've learned over the weekend from the seminar. And so like they just show up and they're like, okay. Right. And then you watch them systematically and robotically deliver this version that this poor affiliate owner who was rattled out of his mind tried to write out 7 lesson plans on a Sunday. Right. Like there's no way it's going to work. And like the thing that affiliate owners have to remember is that the lesson plan is your product. It's 100% your product. If you're doing CrossFit well, that is the product. So the better you can do that, the better it's going to be. And so like there's lots of creative ways that I think that people have come up with now in terms of implementing CAP. So that fear is gone. But when that first came out, I was like, this is going to be a bad thing. Because I was like, this is the single best thing that I can tell you. It was the single greatest thing that I had ever actually put in practice, was just stealing the lesson plan, because it was just so obvious, right? Like I had head coaches and people who wrote lesson plans, but I had junior coaches. And so all of you guys that are listening to this, you have to understand one thing. You need to do coaches reviews, and you obviously have to improve your coaches because they're the ones who are providing the product and the stimulus. One of the easiest ways to do that is to do it regularly, right? Like you can't just do a coaches clinic once a month. Like how effective would you be coaching an air squat if you did it once every 2 months? It would never work. So the only way you could do this is to do it every single day and improve it. And naturally, you can't come in with your clipboard every single day because, for one, you just being there with your clipboard alters the whole stimulus, right? Like, because all of a sudden they're like, Tony's here, right? Like, and it changes the entire environment. But with this lesson plan,
that's funny you just said that, because I do the clipboard once, at times, right? Sometimes
well, it has to be,
on the floor shooting the shit, and it drives me nuts. Some member will walk by and I'll just say it and they'll be like, oh, is Lindsay in trouble? Or, oh, and I'm like,
here.
This is what, I'm like, no, this is what getting better at looks like. Like, this is what, I think it's
what you guys pay for?
A small thing, but I know, but I'm always like, well, how do you want us to improve? But no, totally. The clipboard does change. And it's also a way too, that when you take the class, you have something that you can reference off of, because a lot of times after class, I'll go and I'll be like, okay, this was great. Try this next time, or this for, whatever it is. And it always gives you a context of like, was this done as it was written out, or, so it's just another way to kind of have a set of eyes on it.
Yeah, it's a big piece of the coach's journey that I think is generally missing in pretty much everybody's ascension. And like that, it's not so much your ability to understand and recite the points of performance of the 9 foundational movements, right? It's can you think critically and creatively with the knowledge that you have amassed through the level 1, 2, 3, et cetera. And that piece is generally missing on accident in so many affiliates, because the affiliate owner, out of quality control attempts, has tried to standardize so many things that they're like, I got to handle everything. And then now you've turned these coaches into essentially robots. And so much of the model can be, move forward so much quicker. And like, by letting them write the lesson plan and be accountable to it, it's so easy to just get feedback on a regular basis and give feedback, which is also just as important as like my ability to be like, hey, Nicole, what up with that? Like, that was a weird progression. Where'd you find that? Like, didn't work? No, not at all. It was terrible. I mean, and it's a very fun process that is like, dude, and I tell them like, just stop writing lesson plans. Let them write it. Let them review each other and tell them how to work. And like, it always goes well, in my opinion. I mean, I guess there's probably some train wrecks, but that tells you what you need to work.
You're contributing to the development of your coaches, and,
right?
It's not an easy process. It requires work on the affiliate owner's part but man, when I think about like my 2 newer coaches, just looking at their lesson plans now, like they're nailing it. And you have to be okay with sitting down and saying, no, I think this might not work, or saying, hey, you know what, I don't think this is going to work, which is always a good one, too, of like, but try it and then let's talk about it. Because I think there also has to be this thing too of, you can't guard perfection by letting them write the lesson plan. There has to be this like understanding where, it's real life. It's a real life scenario. Like things might not go exactly as planned. You know, but it all trickles down to where it's like, if you've got skill work, okay, but there's only a limited number of GHDs, then you know that, okay, at 5:30 a.m., one half is going to have to do general warm up into skill work, and then the other class is going to flip flop it with like that is like a orchestrated plan. You can't really get to that level though without first going through the lesson plan and being able to hit your timeline and be able to know the length of your timeline. Because all of a sudden then you switch and you're like, well, they're still in the GHDs. That doesn't work. So again, it's a good example of like how it enables us to do more things in class, or to, coach more, to be better, because we've gone through that process. And it's actually interesting, when we moved to the smaller gym, we kind of had the luxury for, 8 years where, I mean, you never had to move a GHD to do something, or you never had to move the rope.
You got to write that time in now. Equipment moving.
Well, or just like, we had to think more critically about like how things were set up, where and why. And it was initially, it was kind of like, and then now we don't even think about it, but you just kind of had to get back to it.
Few things can make you process your gray areas and what you're bad at than logging into .com and seeing the workout and being run 5K or something, not even like heavy deadlift 1-1-1-1-1, and you're like, right. And like this, there's something that's my point, I guess, in this whole thing, is that as a coach, until you've had to do that, right, you don't understand what you don't know as it applies to how to put together a class and run a class, and really what it means to make yourself a coach. But then the other side too, is the affiliate owner, if your coaches aren't putting their best work forward, and you don't get to be like, wow, every time things like this come up, Nicole seems to be missing this mark. Like, you don't know what area to work on. You're just going to assume, and you're probably going to be like, okay, today we're working on the air squat. And I think that's part of it, but it's such a self-reinforcing system. And I know you guys got it on accident, right? You were just kind of like, we just kind of did it for the sake of doing it. But like, what it really does too, is that like, I know that on Wednesdays I got to write the lesson plan, and like, God forbid gymnastics, like ring muscle up, shows up there. I don't know what to do. Like, so the first thing I'm going to do is sign up for the next closest gymnastics seminar, so that I don't get caught like when, red handed being like, I don't know how to write lesson plans for gymnastics type things. And so it's just such an elegant,
well, I think that's like, I mean, all my coaches do that. They research their lesson plans. They're,
they have like a week to do it,
right? And there's not one way to scale a movement. And if you're scaling the movement the same way every time, like that's routine in itself,
Right. Being like, I don't know how to write this warm up. So you go research a warm up that's effective and applicable to that, and like having the time to do that. But if somebody's like, hey, here's the workout today, you'll never think about warm up design or skill design or any of that stuff. And it's just missing from the whole model.
I think also there's something too about, if you give, if they have the structure of what's the workout, but in terms of, they kind of get to go off on their own rabbit holes and their own tangents and find a corner of education,
their own niche,
that they really enjoy.
It's when we tell all the coaches all the time, like, and our $1 Million Coach program is like, you've got to find your niche. You have to position yourself, and you have to be able to learn to think critically and creatively. Like, you got to keep learning, but once you learn, here's where we're going to teach you guys how to put that stuff together and actually do something with it. And it's all those things, right? It's like finding your niche, understanding your positioning, understanding, your messaging, understanding what makes you uniquely you. And like, that part of it all comes on top of like, do I know what is CrossFit and what its implication and application is? And like, that's part.
And that's the thing, is it should simplify things, because if you can teach CrossFit and you can stand by the methodology, and your coaches can stand by the methodology and teach the methodology, then you know what you're doing. It's
for
just
sure
trying to get better at doing that. Whereas if it's this thing of like, should we do this, or should we offer a sweat class, or should we offer yoga? And I'm not saying that those things are bad, but for us, it was always just, it wasn't part of why we were doing what we were doing. Absolutely. And so it became this like a lot easier to just say, no, we're not going to do that.
Yeah. And I think that's probably the thing that, in my opinion, from an outsider who comes in, who doesn't get the chance to work out at Roots every single day, I can say that you guys have stuck to the simplicity because simple works, right? Like simple scales, simple is the solution. And simple is timeless. It's evergreen, right? The more complicated you have to make something to fix it, the harder it's going to be to keep up with it. And you guys have done a great job of it. And no doubt about it, that's because of, like, obviously you as a person, and as well as Eric as a person who I'm going to get on this podcast. But, I think that there's just a lot.
I think it took the last podcast like 7 months to get him on. So you should.
I know. That's all right. That's why I'm going to try to, I'm just going to hold him hostage while I'm out there and be like, cheeseburger with your name on it. No, but listen, I know the girls they probably want you off here, and the dogs do as well. But I think we could probably spend a whole day talking about literally just the, Roots is why, and your ability to stick to that why, and how you guys have really just done it. And I think, I talk about this a lot, but I think we should get you back on the podcast and we can talk about those things. But if nothing else, like, there's just something that is effortless in your simplistic approach to fitness that is just so well designed and well implemented. I think that part is very cool. I'm glad that you're responsible for the L4. You're the perfect person for that reason. But, like,
thank you. It's
just awesome to have a resource and a pillar in the community like Roots. And I think more people could just do a better job of just being like, stop trying to complicate it. Literally just look at Roots and be like, oh, it's always just been the model. Just make it easier.
Yeah, we didn't make it up. We just did
literally just take the thing that's already been the thing, that since has been the thing, out of research drive forever ago, and be like, how can I do that here and make it mine? And, like, that's the thing that I think Roots has done a great job of, because you are very uniquely, identifiably Roots, but you're also you're a CrossFit purist, and I think that part's cool.
That we are.
All right. Awesome. I'll let you go back to your day. Lisa, you can close the podcast. Even though I didn't let Lisa talk for the last 30 minutes. Sorry, Lisa.
That's fine. I enjoy being a participant and spectator to hear you guys back and forth, and
get fired up about them lesson plans. That's what happens.
I know. It's get them going, guys. All right. Thank you for your time, Nicole. Been amazing. We will definitely have you back on. We have so much more to dig into, and we will see you guys on the next one.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks, Tony.
You're welcome. And